Excelente. Welcome everybody to this week's edition of Virtual Mentoring for Latin Teachers. And I'm excited that Eleanor is already here with us and many other folks are joining in. Today's topic is close to the heart of everybody who's involved in this process, because we're talking about things. Well, our title is Celebrating, Debriefing, and Planning Ahead, round one. Round one because round two will be in the Sunday Hangout, same time, same channel, and so forth. But as we were thinking about what to talk about this week, it occurred to me that we're at that point in the year that's called October. And those of us who have taught, well, we know what October is like. It's a wonderful time, but it's also a really challenging time. The newness has worn off. And for some people, if you started in early August or something, the newness has been gone for a while. But even for those of us that it was late August or early September, the newness is still gone. The honeymoon period, as one of my former principals used to say, is over. And all the things that you thought that you were going to, everything was going to be different this year. Well, some of them haven't happened yet. That one student who you thought, well, it'll be different, and they thought it'll be different. It might be a little bit different, but it might be kind of the same. And things happen, and people start to get sick, and there are things going around. If you haven't had that one virus where you feel dizzy and you think that you're dying for about 4 days, let's just say you don't want to get it. It's not a good thing to get. So anyway, I thought, and I guess we thought as we were planning this, why not talk about things that are going well and kind of celebrate that, things that are going not so great, but not so much from the perspective of whining about them. I mean, we might need to do that a little bit, but also in terms of just what can I do proactively to solve it and make it better. And then if there's anything that's like in your mind that you're thinking, I'd really like to do this, but I don't know how. It could be a simple thing, or it could be a very complex thing. It could be, that, well, I want to change up everything that I'm doing, but I don't know how. Or it could be, I want to do a cycle of embedded readings leading up to reading some authentic text with my students, but I don't know how to make this. Or I just really want them to understand this particular form or this particular usage, but I don't know how. That's always been a problem. So those are the kinds of things that I thought we'd focus on this week, partly because after I'd had that virus for a couple of days, I finally figured out that I wasn't dying. I wasn't having like a heart attack that was taking 4 days. All those things that you worry about, when you're a guy of a certain age and you're feeling a little bit dizzy and your heart is racing, you think, I must be dying. No, you're not dying. Well, I must be, no, it's really just a virus. It really is. And once the fever started, it was pretty obvious what it was. But it was a pretty wretched time. And so I was able to see my various classes, one of the benefits of teaching online. But that's about all I did for several days. And yet good things happened. But before I talk about the good things and the not so good things and the things that I'm not sure how to do, let me turn it over to Ellie since you're here. And are there particular things that were good or things that were challenging or things that you're just thinking, I'm not quite sure what to do right now?
It was overall a good week, without being, it wasn't anything, I don't feel like I got too much done, like in terms of kids actually necessarily learning anything they're going to hold on to for a long time, or rather they learn things, but I'm not things that are going to help them read through. For my kids, my goal is pretty much just to get them to learn anything in the 2 years. Most of them are willing to submit to language study. And it's submit to, not commit to. Anyway, so this week, the big thing that went well is I had been struggling a lot with figuring out what to do every day because I am not following a textbook. So I'm just kind of looking at the top 200 most frequent Latin words. I got on some list, probably Dickinson's, I'm not sure. And I've just been kind of trying to TPRS them in whatever order I can make work. So the last 2 weeks I've been really trying to get the kids to learn that it means goes. And then this week I tried to add when it as well for comes. And the other two big words I added this week were osculat, kisses, and pulsat, hits. And like,
Oh, they sound like some fun stories.
yeah, so those aren't super great words. Like pulsat, I was planning on introducing because it's in the Lingua Latina chapter 3. Osculat, I wasn't intending to, but then in my very first class, it came up as a handy thing for our story. So my whole class, all my classes just happen to know it now. But we got some really fun stories out of it, and I tried a bunch of different activities I hadn't tried before. I did one with a word cloud as a pre-reading activity, and that went okay. I can explain more about that if you want. And I did the word chunk game, which is I saw described by Bob Patrick and Keith Toda on their blogs. That went okay, but it got kind of rowdy, which I guess is good. Actually, I had the principal come in while I was doing it, and the principal, he's a new principal, so I barely know the man, he barely knows me, and saw my kids lined up doing crazy gestures in order to like buzz in for their turn. So some kids were twerking, but anyway, they were translating Latin and they were excited and they were engaged, and it was actually a really good thing for him to see. So I had a lot of moments, even though I'm not sure that pulsat and osculat are the most important words they're going to learn in their Latin career, but it was a good week engagement-wise otherwise.
Oh, that sounds exciting. I love that. It's always nice when the principal comes in and something really good and hands-on and kids are clearly engaged. That's a real win. That is excellent. Yeah. I had a lot of good things this week too. My one class that I've got, for folks who don't know, my current gig is teaching online, and I've got a school-based class in New Jersey that this is the second year that I've been working with them. They're a mixed group of Latin 3s and 5s, and about 10 of each. Well, there are 11 3s and 9 5s, so there are 20 kids. I see them every day for, standard 45-minute, 8-period day kind of configuration. And then I have a bunch of different groups of homeschoolers that are all around the country. We meet virtually an hour once a week and really do most of the equivalent of a year of high school Latin in a 16-week semester with them. And they're in the range of 9, 10, 11 years old. They're really wonderful kids. But with that said, my Latin 1 group, okay, so you got to realize part of the issue is Monday afternoon from 3:30 to 4:30 Eastern, which is great if you're on the West Coast, which a lot of them are, and so it's like 12:30. But the kids who are on the East Coast, and it's 3:30 in the afternoon on a Monday, and I was coming down with that virus and didn't know it. And it was the beginning of October, and they were squirrely. So it wasn't the greatest, happiest class, probably ever, and ended up with a email to all of their parents and then about some of the things that had happened in the class, and then some specific emails to particular kids who had been more squirrely. But the good thing that came from that was that everybody realized, oh, we were being a problem. This is why we were being a problem. This is how we were being a problem. We're sorry. I had a couple of one-on-one sessions with kids who had various issues over the week, and I think we've really pretty much cleaned it up. So what I thought was going to be a really terrible thing turned out to be a really great thing. Of course, it helped that by the time that I was in touch with folks, that I was getting over the virus rather than coming down with it, and that I'd also been traveling while I had the virus, which was great. I didn't know that I was going to come down with the virus, but then I did, and I just felt terrible. But then, by the time that I was starting to hear back from parents and kids, and we were talking about ways to prevent things from happening, and they were being really proactive and taking ownership of what they had done, it ended up being a really, really great thing that I had thought was going to be kind of terrible. So I guess I would encourage everybody out there in spectator land who's been having classroom management issues because it's October. Those happen. But the good news is that when you take charge of them in a way that works for you and make it clear this is what we need to do and why we need to do it, that very often, I won't say always, but very often you end up with really good things coming from really bad things. So that was the thing that I wanted to celebrate. I think that's actually the biggest thing that I wanted to celebrate. The other kind of exciting thing is that my Latin 3 and 5 kids, the school-based group, they've been reading, the 3s have been reading one set of readings, and the 5s have been reading another set of readings that are all about characters that they know, and their families planning weddings. So the weddings and marriages are being arranged and stuff. And so next week, they're off on Monday, but on Tuesday through Friday, we're going to be reading the 2 Catullus wedding songs. And I'm excited about that. We may not read all of the really long ones, but we'll read a good bit of it. And we'll be practicing scansion with the 5s, who are quite good at that. And then we'll be introducing scansion to the 3s, who haven't had that experience yet. And then they'll be performing things, and then they're going to take their favorite quote from one or the other of the 2 and make a story, a shortish, simplish story that features their quote. So they'll be doing that either possibly starting on Friday if we're really, really efficient, or more likely coming up on Monday the 19th. So it's a good and exciting time, I think, in my world, and I'm kind of fuzzy on the details of how we're going to do these stories and what I want the rubric to look like for the Latin 3 kids. I know what I want it to look like for the 5s. So maybe that's a thing that we can talk about, since one of our themes is planning ahead, and that's an area where it would be helpful for me to kind of talk it out with some people. But so there was my concern and my celebration, and also my kind of looking ahead thing. Ellie, were there any things that you wanted to talk about in terms of looking ahead, stuff that you'd like to plan for and not maybe sure how to do it?
Yeah, I got some of those. I got one idea for you, though. If you have an idea for how you want to do your rubric for your 5s, is it possible that, say it's a 1 to 4 rubric, and 4 is the A+ level? Is it possible that for your 3s you could make, like, this is too confusing, hang on. For your Latin 3 students.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying now. Yes.
Level 4, you could make whatever's a B for the Latin 5 kids, make that an A for the Latin 3 kids. I don't know.
Yes, that is an excellent idea, because it's a holistic, proficiency-oriented kind of rubric anyway. And so that would make absolute sense to say that would be the same rubric and basically the same task, but just with a column that says for Latin 3 and a column that says for Latin 5. Now I feel kind of silly, because they did we do a mid-quarter proficiency check thing that counts the test grade. And of course I did that with them. It was the same rubric, because it's a reading comprehension test. And there were, for the reading comp section, there was a column that says for Latin 3 and a column that says for Latin 5, and that's exactly what we did.
The other thing you might want to do is Latin 3 has less composition experience, presumably, right?
Exactly.
So is that something you're worried about?
Yeah,
I mean, if they've been doing it for 2 years already, it's not a problem. But I was thinking that if you think they're a little uncomfortable with composition still, you could try giving them target structures that they have to use at least once in their composition or something. That gives them a target and a framework to do it around. And then the 5s can use that framework if they want to, if they also need it.
Well, I just am hearing now from, let's see, who wants to join us but is having trouble logging in.
All right. Well, I can talk while you deal with that.
I'm just sending her this message. She said she thinks it's a device problem, and I said try other device. So hopefully, since I think she had said that there's more than one available, hopefully she'll be joining us in a little bit. But yeah.
So I realized while you were talking about how you sort of had to talk to parents and then debrief with the kids, I realized that actually is something that I did this week too, because Friday was progress report day last week. We had we had yesterday off for professional development, lucky us. But the Friday before was progress report, and this year I'm doing standards-based grading, which I've never done before. And it was mixed results. So the kids who got bad grades were unhappy, if you can believe that. And I I was erring on the harsher side. I wanted it to be kind of a, you can use progress reports as a wake-up call in a way that I'm not going to do term grades because it doesn't affect their GPA. But anyway, so one thing that was nice about it was most of the kids whose grades were suffering, it was because my rubric has a section on how they interact in the class. It's a communication section, and partly it's about their participation, but it's also about their behavior and their sort of anti-participation behaviors, like having side conversations or blurting things out or not sticking to Latin when we're supposed to be staying in Latin, that kind of thing. And even my most irritating students, sorry, I love all my students and they're perfect baby angels, but yes, even my most extroverted, I don't know, students, they looked at the rubric and they understood. They were like, well, I understood why I got a 2 in that because I do these 5, 6 things that are listed here as reasons I might get this grade. But they were still upset because they were like, I still feel like it shouldn't be this low. But they looked at my rubric and they were like, well, I understand my grade, but I don't like it. And actually, once one class that was very upset because it's got a lot of those, squirrely is the nice word for them, but these are very hyper kids. That block was most upset with me because it's about half kids who can't stop talking. And I asked them, can you give me 5 minutes where you won't interrupt me and I'll try and explain why I'm trying to do this grading rubric, why I've changed this kind of grading. And I explained to them like about why I need their engagement, why this is actually a fairer way for me to grade them on their progress. And it got a lot better after that. And also they have been behaving better this week, which is nice.
Excellent.
They listen.
So often
a little quieter.
They don't realize, they'll just not realize this is why I need to do this thing. I mean, especially an intelligent kid in a class, who's had a lot of experiences with classes where they really didn't have to pay full attention and they would still.
Yeah, and that's the case with a lot of these kids, although some of them are just that way. That's just 100%. They're always going to be on full volume. But yeah, we're working on that. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's definitely some of them are the kids who are too smart for this. So I still need to find a way to give them something to do while I'm repeating things for other kids. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so maybe the I'm really trying to think what I'm trying to say here. Maybe that all those different class jobs that TPRS teachers come up with is a thing that you could have them focus on, that you could develop specifically for your faster students.
Yeah, no, and I do. I do that. But I have to use, like, the most engaging jobs are the counting jobs because they get to use a little clicker, a click counter. Hello, Jocelyn.
Hey, am I doing this right?
Yeah, you're there. We're good.
How do you...
Yeah, and Jocelyn's here. Welcome. Yay, I'm so glad because I know you were having some difficulty logging on, but yay, you are here.
Okay, how does this work? Do you just see whoever is talking? Is that how it works?
Yeah, pretty much.
See whoever's talking, and if you have a camera and want to turn it on, then you can be seen. Otherwise, your little avatar will show up, which is your little blue person.
Yeah, I always turn my camera off because I don't want to bother to look human on Saturdays. So.
And I turn mine on when I'm talking because I'm the host and I feel like I'm supposed to, but I hate being on camera, so I am right there with you. I've gotten better about it. In teaching online, which I do now, will get you over hating to be on camera.
I don't care. I just don't know how to work the camera.
Oh, you don't have to do anything. It'll turn it.
No, you're fine just the way you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Good. Are you comfortable?
So far, so good.
Okay.
I'll figure out the camera later.
Okay. Yeah. So with my classroom jobs, I definitely do need ideas to give the quicker students who are more bored, because some of them are happy to be actors, but most of them would prefer not to. And the most engaging job I have is letting them use the little clicker counters. You know how like they'll count attendance at a small sports game or something, where they'll just have a clicker. They click every time someone comes through the door. I have a bunch of those that they can use to count words I want to repeat, but I give those to the diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD kids who need something to do, and that gets most of them doing something during class that's helping them focus. So I need more tasks for my quite clever students who are feeling irritated by the repetition. So I don't quite know what to do for most of them.
Yeah. Oh, Nancy, yay! Nancy has been able to join us too. This is great. We've got a good sized group today. Also, Jocelyn's camera is now working.
Oh,
Yay!
good.
I see you sewing.
So far, so good.
So question jobs. One of the things that I have had kids do, if we're telling stories, is to have them attempt to if this is your particularly fast, just grasp it right away, kid. Have them attempt to transcribe it, whether they're doing so on paper or if there's a computer and they're a fast typist, they're trying to transcribe it that way. With the idea that then you have it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a version of whatever the class story is that's accessible, that, rather than you try to reconstruct and remember, you can look at what they've got and either make corrections, make minor corrections, make major corrections, type it up, and then you've got it available later.
I have a scribe job that I use sometimes, but an awful lot of my students hate writing, like not just hate writing essays, or like, oh, I don't want to have to write. So I guess I could let them type it on their phone or something, but I'd still have to be behind them making sure they're not texting instead of typing the story. But
the simple way around that is, and as soon as we're done, you share the Google Doc with me.
Yeah, or I can even have them type it in our shared Google Classroom and put a doc up for them to type it, so that if I want, I can be seeing it go on my computer in front of me.
Exactly.
Yes, that's a good idea. Thank you.
In fact, you could then also, depending on who it is, you could project it while they're typing it, and then you could even have somebody else who's doing corrections for them on the fly.
Maybe, yeah.
I think you have to work up to that. That's not a thing that you do on day one of week one. But I think that is a thing that you do. And then you can rotate, that person if you've got several people who are pretty good typists.
Yeah.
So I missed the beginning of this. Is the activity the class is telling a story together orally? Is that what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm doing the story ask thing. I am doing TPRS like I was planning to, and it's going okay. But some of my quicker students are a little bit bored and antsy.
Okay. Well, that's a good idea. What Justin suggested is another variation of that. You could have a student illustrate the story.
Yes, I let them do that too.
Okay.
Again, a lot of them don't want to because they're feeling lazy or something. But I think if I let them do it on a whiteboard, for whatever reason, those are magic.
Yeah.
Then perhaps they'll be more willing.
Right.
But thank you. That's a good thing. I haven't been using it lately, so that's a good reminder. I haven't been using either of those lately, even though I technically have them in place as jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in fact, if you had a couple people illustrate it, you could show it at the end. You show the transcription in the stories, and you vote on what's the best.
That's the plan. I need to get a document camera so I can share pictures eventually too, because I think that would be a lot of fun.
Actually, they could illustrate it on PowerPoint, and then you could project it.
Oh, that's true.
In fact, because illustrating takes longer, the drawing takes probably longer than they're saying. You could have one person illustrate the first half of the story, and then another person illustrate the second half. That way, one person could keep up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, that is a great idea. And it occurs to me also that if they illustrate on paper, you can just take a picture of it with the phone camera and stick that into a And I know this because I used to have a document camera, which I loved. Those things are a wonderful tool. However, before I had my document camera, what we did was it was a silly but possible workaround. Somebody would take a picture with the phone camera and email it to me. I would then, or share it with me in Google Drive, and then I would then stick it into the document or the whatever.
Oh, wow,
which
okay.
seems ridiculous.
So smart.
It works. Then we got the document camera, and of course, those have the ability to save the image, and then that became just then a routine thing that we did. Then I left that school and started teaching online, and I don't need one of those anymore. But if kids illustrate things and they don't draw it in a screen-based app, then they just take a picture of it with their phone and email it to me, just like we did back in the day.
Oh, that's fun.
If you have a Google Drive, you can open up and they're using that, or are you the only one who has a shared computer?
They don't have computers with them. They have their phones. So if I work with one of them to make sure they know how to use the Google Drive on their phone, then they do have school Google accounts. So they could technically be typing into a doc there, drawing into a doc there.
They could be making a Google presentation, which is the equivalent of PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And that way, instead of trying to draw, because a lot of kids really hate drawing because everybody can only draw stick figures.
Yeah,
but if the goal is to find like a couple pictures and dump it into the Google presentation to illustrate the picture, that could be pretty hilarious, and it might work. And then you could share that presentation immediately. You don't have to take a picture and upload or any of that.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea because I think they'd have a lot of fun with that. All right, thank you. I got great ideas. Since you and Nancy, bye Nancy. Nancy's no longer here. But since you just joined, Jocelyn, do you have anything that happened this week that you want to celebrate or discuss or whatever?
Well, yeah, a couple good things happened. I was appointed department head.
Oh, sweet. Congratulations.
Thank you. That's not, here or there in terms of teaching Latin, but something cool happened. I don't know if it was this week or last week. We have a rotating block schedule, and we have a long block, like a 75-minute period. It's new this year, and I can never keep track of when it is. So I'm looking at the schedule, and I tell my class, look, okay, you guys are here for 75 minutes. And the class cheered.
Aww.
It just felt completely unaware,
That's wonderful.
That's excellent.
Yeah. It was just like spontaneous, and because I expected them to groan because everyone's like, oh God, 75 minutes, but they were like, oh yay, so that was good. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, but that's incredible. I'll make that my dream.
It'll happen.
Really wonderful. That just really, that makes anybody's day when your students are happy to be with you. That is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Let's see, Nancy, did you have anything particularly wonderful or not so wonderful that happened this week that you'd like to talk about, or anything that's coming up in the next couple of weeks that you're thinking, oh, I want to do this, but I don't know how?
Well, I gave my first 2 Latin tests to a class ever this past. And the Latin 1 test went mostly very well, which is pretty much exactly what I was expecting. I had one student do not quite as well as she or I expected, but we're working on that. And my Latin 2 and 3 test, because I have a combined class of 3, and I made my first student cry with that test. So I love milestones this week.
Well, congratulations. This will happen again.
It will. This is not the first nor the last time.
So I hear. And this was a student who I thought would do very, very well. She's clearly the best prepared consistently and the most talented student in the class. But on the flip side, the student that I was really, really, sort of staying up at night worried about, who I didn't think was going to do very well, actually did quite well. So it was a very strange experience, whole test. I am still trying to figure out how to design something that's fair and that assesses what I want to assess, especially in a mixed level class like that.
Yeah.
The three of them are just pretty much completely lacking in any cultural background. And so with our 80-minute periods, I've been focusing a little bit on various topics and had assigned several chapters of Edith Hamilton, because we're talking, I mean, these kids don't even know, very basic things like the name, and I mean, just complete blank looks every time something comes up.
Right.
Well, I thought, I had a quarter of the test was a bit of a gimme section, I thought. Apparently not so much. But then we also had a dialogue. I had them write a dialogue as another quarter of the test, which went very, very well. But then as I began to grade it, I thought, oh, how do I even mark these? Sure, I can correct their Latin, and one girl did not need any correction at all. She did very, very well on it. Another had about what I think I would have expected of where I want her to be right now. However, I can't give it full credit, and I don't really know how to grade it in that context, especially when the rest of the test was, well, here's the right answer, here's the wrong answer. So yes, anyway, that's not what's been going through my head for the last couple of days, because it's been a weird week.
Well, weird. I think everybody had one. Yeah, we all had a weird week, didn't we? Oh, I'm sorry, Ellie. We both started talking at the same time, so
that's okay.
I'll defer to you.
I was going to say, for the dialogue, in this case, rubrics are your friend. And it may be that you make a rubric before the test and you read the dialogues and it does not apply, as it turns out. But now that you have had one dialogue writing assignment, you can look at them, figure out which ones you thought were, A+, which ones you thought were just okay, etc. And that you can make a rubric based on what you got. And also, I wouldn't, if you really feel like in a tight spot about how to grade them, you can always say, I counted the dialogue as extra credit. If you really don't feel fair about how to grade them yet, and then you can use them to build your rubric for next time. But yeah, I mean, at this point, you can grade them on things like, since you don't have a rubric and they've already done it, you could grade them on things like, I don't know, no, it's hard to do this without a rubric, because you want to be like, well, did they use a target thing we've been focusing on? Did they use vocab from this chapter? Or you could just have it based on understanding. Do I understand what they're saying? And that gets you at least a C. Do I understand what they're saying, but there are mistakes, but it's overall correct? I would call that probably close to an A. And the perfect person just gets an A as well. But you can't make perfect the goal, because almost no one's going to get perfect every time.
Right, that's true. And my one student who I had finally felt like we'd made some breakthroughs because we'd worked on a couple of dialogues in class, and she had just embraced this, was very excited about it, and was doing more than I thought she could. So I thought, well, I'll put this on here, I'll see what she can do. And of course, I didn't have a well-developed rubric ahead of time, and I thought that this might cause trouble. And then when I looked at it, I realized, oh yes, I really should have had this.
It's a story of my life. That's why I'm such a big fan of rubrics, because I've never used them as much as I should.
Well, and
I have learned to love the rubric as well, and for that same reason, because if I have no, I think I know what I'm doing, but until I have actually defined it and written a rubric about it, I'm really not sure. And then sometimes when I'm writing the rubric, I realize I need this, but I didn't specify it in the assignment, so I need to go back and revise the assignment so that they know, I want you to do this.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Yes.
Yeah.
And well, the particular student, she actually did one thing that I thought was more complex than she could do, but she did it correctly and then messed up some more basic things. So it's frustrating to know how to reward that.
That's a really common thing in language acquisition. Whenever you're acquiring something new, you do, like, it just language acquisition, first, second, doesn't matter. If you're acquiring something new and more complex, you're totally going to regress in other things for a little while. I don't have like data to show you on that, but it's a thing.
Yeah. Do you have a retake policy?
Point with this class, I don't, but over the past month or so, I have been just reworking everything I thought I was going to do with them, and I was nervous going in with the combined level class, and then they've continued to throw me little curveballs, and so that may be a thing that I should develop.
Well, here's what I would suggest. I've been using this retake policy for about 10 years, and it works pretty well. I allow kids to retake tests for 80% of the grade. And what that means is that, first of all, you have to come and demonstrate to me that you know the material before you're allowed to retake it. And second of all, it means that you're not going to have kids who will, like, say, oh, you know, I just won't study, I'll just do it later and retake it, because they know that they can only get high as an 80. Right. But that way, if you have a kid who bombs the quiz, who was devastated about it, or just, like, totally missed one section, they can retake it, and, you know, they feel good about it, and it works pretty well. I tell the kids I limit the retakes to 2 per quarter, but I actually pay no attention to that, and I just let them, you know, because ultimately the goal is, do you know the information? You know, I really don't care, and I just give people the same test because I don't have time to make 15 tests. And, you know, if you've come and you've stayed with me and you've studied with me, and then you retake it and you get 100, now you have an 80 and you feel good and you get it and I get it, it's good, you know. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah, that does make sense.
I was going to say I really like that idea of claiming that there's a limit on them but not really enforcing it, and then also the 80%, because then the kid who made the two, you protect yourself against 2 dangers. One, the kid who's just going to come in, bomb it the first time because they know they can retake it. And then on the other hand, the kid who made a 97.5, but they want a 99.5. And I love them and I was them, but you know, that doesn't mean that I have to allow that sort of thing. Right. You know, I do remember one time, many years ago, I gave a test. Kids made 103.5. I gave it back to her, and she started crying. And I said, "Name? Why are you crying?" She said, "Because I messed up on that one section." I said, "Well, you did. You did lose 5 points on that one section for not following directions, but you still made 103.5. She said, "But Mr. Schwab, it could have been 108.5.
Oh dear.
Started crying. Oh, she wept. Oh, she wept.
I think
She'd be embarrassed that I remember this, you know, 20 years later.
I think I would have. I'm not slapping that student.
Well, I have another suggestion too, unrelated to the quizzes and tests, and they are always hard to figure out. You know, things I think are going to be easy wind up being impossible, and things I think are going to take them a while, they breeze through. It just takes a while, and you're never quite sure. But in terms of culture, and Edith Hamilton, what grade do you teach?
So everyone in that class is in the 11th grade.
Okay.
I am teaching 4 different preps. 2 them are English, and I'm a first-year teacher, so I really just, it was I had on hand.
Sure.
Was sort of.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
Do you know the stories, the mythology stories?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, here's what I suggest you do. Just tell them. Just tell the story. Start with the gods, I have a great PowerPoint of the gods. I can send it to you. You won't, but I know all the gods like the back of my hand. I'm sure you do too, the main gods. And then I just start telling myths. I tell Theseus, I tell Perseus, I tell Jason in the Golden Fleece, I tell the Trojan War. That takes like a bunch of time, and it is such a hit. And for a long time, I did projects with Edith Hamilton mythology. And first of all, they're a pain because you got to grade them and come up with them. And the kids really hate reading this book, even kids that like to read. But as soon as I started telling the stories, it was like magic happened. And I've told these stories to 7th graders and 12th graders. The vibe is always a little different. With 11th graders, we spend some time making fun of the stories. And then kids will tell you, oh, yeah, this sounds like so-and-so, that movie. And you're like, yeah, except in that part, blah, blah, blah. And it also you create a dialogue with them. But, as a first-year teacher, you have also so much to do. Don't bother creating, projects, out of projects. And I got to tell you, I started doing this out of desperation because I didn't know what to do one day. So I'm just going to tell the story. But it was such a hit, and it has been such a hit every year. I swear to God, I wish everybody... These stories were meant to be told orally. It is just magical when you tell them, with any group. So that's what I would suggest.
And Jocelyn has told me this before as well, that you should just tell the stories. And you're probably thinking right now, well, you are clearly a master storyteller, and you're really good at it, and your kids must love it. And that's true. Jocelyn has had a lot of practice, but she has a very deadpan kind of aspect, and I think it comes across okay. And I've tried doing this a couple times with my kids, and I am not a master storyteller. And you end up just kind of telling them very colloquially, like as if you would say what your friend, who everyone knows is kind of a screw-up, was up to. You tell them the story about Zeus being ridiculous with a woman again, and the kids like it. And if they start to zone out, ask them a question. Be like, what do you guys know about Zeus? What's he usually like with women? Is he a good husband? And a couple of them will know, and you can at least get them to come back in that way.
And I don't keep it long. I mean, the maximum length of a story is 20 minutes. And yeah, as Eleanor said, I'm real colloquial. I'm like, so Helena Troy had a sister. And I'm like, can you imagine what it's like to be Helena Troy's sister? And then I do this thing where, like, oh my God, now I'm blanking on her sister's name. I'm always blanking on people. What's her name?
Clytemnestra, no?
Yeah, Clytemnestra, thank you. So I do this thing where I'm like, I'm Clytemnestra answering the phone. Yeah? No, she's not here. No, I won't tell her you called, because you're the 12th guy who's called. She doesn't want to talk to you, because I know so. And then we have a discussion about what it's like to be the friend of the beautiful person, or, I just sort of like, I'm real loose with it. And I can't even remember half the names, so sometimes I have to go back and look, but it doesn't matter. At the end, they know the stories, and it's just fun. It brings you closer to your class.
Mm-hmm. And that is.
Oh, this sounds like so much fun. I love the idea of the phone conversation of storytelling. I'm gonna have to remember that.
And that is something pretty close to what I'd intended to do. And then just with the split class and feeling like I'm still running out of time every period, I just photocopied and sent them out on their way. But the frustrating thing, I think, was the things that I asked on the test were things that we'd also discussed in class.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had sort of explained things in a more colloquial way. And from two students who are relatively on top of things, I got nothing. They had no idea who Prometheus was after a reading plus talking about it and reading a Latin story about it. And I don't know if I didn't present it correctly, or I didn't reinforce it correctly, or whether this is just a failure on the student's part. And I think it would be easier to tell with a larger class.
How long ago did you go over Prometheus in reference to the test? Was it the day before, or?
No, it was a couple of weeks ago. But
yeah, no, it's gone. It's not your fault, and it's not their fault, but unless they specifically knew, and you should look at your notes, you are taking notes right, on our myth, then yeah. Maybe if the day before you played some like Jeopardy or something and had them refresh their memory, but yeah, something like a foreign name, which to us Prometheus seems like a super easy name, at least it's not Hypermnestra, which is their other sister. But yeah, a name like Prometheus to them might as well be Chinese. So it's not your fault, it's not their fault, but it's been a while and it just made it through the filter in their brain and it washed down the sink.
The thing is, I'm so resistant to this. We did go over twice in the couple days leading up to the test, here is what's going to be on each respective section. And remember, we talked about these things in class, but I am pulling these questions directly from the 3 chapters of Edith Hamilton that I gave you. You have to know these. I wrote that up on the board.
Okay.
Spoke about it, they nod. And I feel like I'm really getting my dander up about it, but I do not want to ever bring Jeopardy into my classroom. I always hated that. I felt that it was sort of insulting when I was a student, and perhaps this is just a personal problem, but I just feel like that's spoon feeding, and I don't want to do that. Am I totally wrong-headed here?
No, I mean,
I don't think
you're just
I don't
hoping
think so.
for
I
the
mean,
best.
particularly. Oh, go ahead, Ellen. Sorry.
Oh, I've been talking a lot. It's okay.
Well, I mean, I feel like I've been talking a lot too. I guess that's part of my job. But what I was going to say is you got to do what feels comfortable with you. And also, given that we know that it's a rather expensive private school, and that they should be, that these are girls who are aiming to go to some pretty big name colleges, that you probably don't want to do Jeopardy with them in the way that you might in a different environment. So then the question maybe is, how do we design or help Nancy design an activity that reviews whatever the cultural concept is, but in a way that feels less artificial and less like spoon feeding? And I have some thoughts, but let me see what everybody else is thinking in terms of, so not Jeopardy, and maybe more student-directed rather than teacher-directed of a review of the cultural concept, whatever it may be.
And then in that case, I might ask them to reenact the stories, either as a video or you could have them do it with puppets for the Shire kids, or you can have a Shire kid be the narrator, or have a non-speaking rule. Ask them to reenact the stories or retell them in 5 minutes, and retell the entire story of the Trojan War in 5 minutes or less, and try to make it something kind of high energy like that, but not necessarily graded. But then they will probably listen better to one another than they might to reviewing it from a story or from in-class discussion a while ago. That's one idea.
I would use another idea, and I've done this with, I do this a lot actually, and I've done this with AP classes as well. I just have them draw.
Yeah.
It's like our semester review is everybody draw what happened to Prometheus when. And yeah, it's all going to be stick figure art. But another thing I did when we were studying the Aeneid in my advanced placement class, we acted out each chapter with finger puppets. Nice. Seriously. Mm-hmm. I had them construct a little finger puppet play, of the parts that we didn't read in Latin, and then they performed it for the class. I didn't get a score less than a 3. I mean, and AP kids loved it. I mean, they have so much highbrow stuff, in their AP. Kids taking advanced classes are doing a lot of, they're doing highbrow stuff in their AP Chem, AP Calc class. My class is a little bit crazier, but we still got top marks. So, you can be whimsical but serious about the material at the same time. So I don't know. I like Jeopardy. I do use it. I don't use any of these things all the time. Mm-hmm. But occasionally a Jeopardy review is a really good way to review things.
Yeah, and I was just throwing that out as a random, do some kind of review game. That doesn't have to be Jeopardy. I'm too lazy to make a Jeopardy myself.
I don't know why I'm so hostile to it, and some of the things that you are suggesting, I'm actually already using similar things in my English classes. Like, currently my 9th graders are writing Antigone the musical. Part
Oh my God.
round.
I just think that is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And they're so excited about it. They're getting really into it.
Right.
I don't know why. I think I have these sort of deep-seated feelings that, oh, well, you're juniors, and I remember where I was, and, you know, you need to be where I was. And I know that's not a very productive attitude, but then maybe it's coming out too much of this class. I just get frustrated because I felt like I could handle 3 chapters of reading, even at that age when I was sort of scattered and disorganized and always turning in things late. And then just to see this, read the chapter, answer these questions, and they can't do it.
Well, I don't think if they can do. I think they can do it. I've taught Edith Hamilton. I'm certified in English, and I've taught that book in English. I tell you, it's never successful. There's something about the dogs are barking. The way it's a story. The book is for academics, people who want to know sort of the different roots of the story. I swear to God, when I taught mythology and we read Edith Hamilton and I had people write papers and projects, it was always such a slog. Even with kids who should know better, it just doesn't stick. I use it as a resource to tell the stories, but it's not really a readable book. And I assume if you've got these high functioning kids, they've got 12 other assignments and they're prioritizing about what they really have to read. And they probably did read it, but maybe they read it at midnight when, right after they did their chem homework, and didn't stick, So I don't know. I would find either another book to teach mythology or just tell it, because that book, I don't know. I've never had success with it.
And that's the reason I didn't assign the whole book.
Yeah.
It meant to be a stopgap measure, and I didn't think that, the 50 pages and 3 chapters would be too hard to ask. And I mean, I have one student the one who was crying by the end of the test, she admitted to me she'd only read one of the chapters. And so you couldn't get away with this in college, or you couldn't at the sort of place I went to. I don't know. I'm just very frustrated, and I think right now I'm just wanting to take out my frustration. I don't, because there are lots of good suggestions out there, and I would like to try more of the telling, even if I just reserve the first 5 or 10 minutes of the, I mean, I have an 80-minute period, so why not? It's a bit of a warm-up story a day, which again was what I'd thought about doing, but I just have to figure out how to do that in a way that works for me without trying to be too much of a perfectionist. I
would try and do it as a brain break in the middle of class or at the end of class when they're zoning out and they're sick of doing grammar, rather than at the beginning.
And I thought about that too. The one thing I find myself running into is then I have my period planned out, and even if I say, oh, we're going to do this for 10 minutes at the end before I give the homework, I end up, as I'm teaching, oh, well, we need to work more on the Latin, we need to do more on this, and I'm not getting enough done in this period. And so I'm not very good at stopping myself and making myself do that. I don't know if that's something that it's just with time I'll get better at it.
I think for me, like first year teacher, because you feel like you have to use every minute, and I mean, it's good to use every minute. The other thing, of course, that you can do is, if you really want the brain break, you just say, okay, at this time, we're going to stop. I'm going to tell the story, but I'm going to tell it at least partly in Latin, and they're going to get up and act it out. If you have 3 parts, or 4, then, then one of you can be Epimetheus, and one of you can be Prometheus, and one of you can be the fire, and then somebody can be Pandora, but then somebody can be the vulture eating Prometheus's liver, and somebody can be the liver, and you can express the thoughts in Latin, even if it's just oh, or Or Abi.
I tell the
Something
story.
like that.
Sorry. I tell the
yeah.
stories after a test. I think for me that's the best way to do it. Like I give a test every Friday. It's actually a quiz, but after the quiz, everyone is kind of mentally done, and they look forward to it because no one's looking forward to the quiz. And part of the reason why I told the stories is because, like, what I really want to grill everybody on is the Latin. I want you to be able to read. I want you to know these words. And this is the most economical use of my time to get this information to you in a way that you will remember it. And, if I want to test how do you remember these, if I have you draw them on whiteboards, I know that I can test that. It takes no preparation on my part. It doesn't take a huge amount of time to do it. So, with the culture, I think we all feel sort of pressed by, yeah, the culture is important, but oh my God, we got to get through this curriculum, and the culture always seems to be pulling time away from the curriculum. So, storytelling, besides being extremely enjoyable, is I found the most economical use of time, because then I can have people do more translating and more reading and writing for homework in Latin, and I don't have to deal with, did you read Edith Hamilton or not? Each to his own, but I understand your frustration because I always feel like, we need to practice this more. We need to practice this more. One of the low points last week, I discovered, it seems like my 8th graders forgot every verb we learned last year. And we're reading a story that was a review story that everybody should have, been able to translate, and nobody could remember a single frickin' verb. Like, amare. Are you kidding me? So now I have to go review all the verbs, which is not something I plan to do, but we have to do it because we can't go on if nobody knows any verbs. So I understand your frustration with this. I'm not trying to make light of it. And anyway.
Yeah, and I can definitely empathize with sort of coming in and being like, all right, we're going to get this Latin done, we're going to do a good job, I've got my stuff planned out, and then sometimes the students aren't always going to be who you want them to be, and that sounds actually kind of condescending, and I'm sorry, but it's so true. Just because as a teacher, it's hard to remember that as teachers, we were the kids who, even if we didn't like school necessarily, we liked learning, and there's an awful lot of people who have to be really coaxed into liking learning for its own sake. Even at a very good school, you're going to get people who, it's just not their first interest and they'd much rather be doing something else. And so it's kind of you have to practice forgiving them for not being as good as you want them to be, even though it sucks and you can still be angry inside your heart. Just take a lot of deep breaths, I guess.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I used to teach in private school, and one of the things the principal talked a lot to the kids about, and I so appreciate him doing this, was gratitude. That gratitude towards teachers who are trying, their best is extremely important. And it's okay to remind kids to be grateful. Sometimes when we play a game and it doesn't work or they're just being, jerks, I'm like, we don't have to do this. We can do another worksheet. Yep. I know that you do that in your other classes. That'd be a lot easier for me. And sometimes when a kid comes in and says, offhand remark, oh, Miss Casey's the best math teacher, I'll did you tell Miss Casey that? They always say no. I'm like, well, you need to. Because did you know that 50% of teachers quit in the first 5 years? If you want your good teachers to continue to be good teachers, you need to tell them, because we need gratitude too. And for a lot of them, that's kind of eye-opening because they never really considered that we were people who needed to hear, they just, particularly private school kids, they're just used to take. And it's good to ask your kids sometimes, well, what are you giving back here? I need you to give back because I'm kind of empty. And And I really thank that principal who kind of helped me see the light there. But sometimes that's a good conversation to have with them, particularly when you're feeling burnt out or like you guys are, when they're very unappreciative, as they certainly can be.
Yeah, I've definitely said a couple times, guys, listen, I know you're finding this repetitive. I know maybe you think this story thing is dumb, but do you really want to do what we did last year with all the worksheets and translating and memorizing charts? And all of a sudden they're like, nope, okay. Sometimes, I mean, I guess I feel it's a little bit like threatening them, but it does work.
Well, it's just letting them know that it could be different. You know, you're really trying your best here, and they need to see that.
And I've definitely cried this year because I was like, I spent this whole summer working so hard for you guys. I didn't cry to them, oh my God, but I cried by myself thinking I put all this work in. I had everything planned out. I was going to, do a great job for them, and this was going to be so engaging, and they're still acting really ungrateful about it. They're not trying. And it's probably, you're always going to have days like that, and that's okay. You don't have to feel like a bad teacher because you're upset with them for not learning like you want them to be learning.
Yeah, I think that it is really important to be clear about the fact that you are upset or that you are, and especially once you've developed a pretty good relationship with kids, which it sounds like you've done, because they are kids and they are not necessarily thinking about things beyond what are my plans for this weekend, or I can't believe that such and so is going out with such and so, or whatever it may be. And particularly in the kind of small school community where you guys are, and where you're all around each other 24/7, I think it's so important to, just to say, I was upset when this happened because, and to use those kinds of iMessages that we all have learned how to do one way or another down the road. And I do think that it's important, to phrase them that way, because I have in my life, unfortunately, given some you messages to classes. I once told a group exactly what I thought of them, and they proceeded to tell me exactly what they thought of me, which I really kind of deserved. And then the next day, I said, guys, well, I was young, and I was tired, and I was angry, and I think it was October, come to think of it. And then the next day, I went back and I said, guys, look, I'm really sorry. I was in a terrible mood because of a bunch of some things that y'all had done and some things that had just happened that had nothing to do with you guys at all. But here's the core issue. The core issue is that when you guys do this, I'm going to feel this way because, and then I'm going to react that way, in the following ways probably. So what can we do together to keep that from happening? And then we had a really good, productive discussion, and it got a lot better. And I can remember that, 20 several years later.
Nancy, I think you knocked your ears off.
Oh, it's okay. I know this has all been very helpful, and actually, a lot of what we've just been talking about is super applicable to my English classes, which are much less of that was the subject I never thought I would be teaching. So I don't feel as comfortable in there, but they're larger classes with younger students who act and react in all sorts of ways that have taken me by surprise and have made me cry and have made me be a bit snappy at them. I even got after I was very, very honest with them about what they were doing and was not very, I don't think I didn't say anything inappropriate, but I certainly went off on them. And I got well, that escalated quickly.
Oh.
And I said, guys, it didn't actually. Because you have done X, Y, and Z over the past couple of weeks consistently, despite the fact that we've talked about this, and you just can't do that if you want to function in here. But anyway, I thank you all.
I'm teaching history as well, and I understand that. So, oh God, what am I doing here? Feeling, and it is different. It's a very different dynamic than a language class too. Anything that's not Latin, I mean, is
I know I need an English teacher mentoring hangout every Saturday too.
Yeah.
Well, I taught English for 10 years, and actually longer than that. So I've also taught history. You often do find in Latin that you wind up with other topics. But I started out in English, and then they made me teach a Latin class because they found out I knew Latin. So Latin was a thing I was like sort of at sea at with, and then eventually I figured out Latin and figured out I liked it better than English. But yeah, it often is the case. But yeah. Anyway, I really do. This has been a lot of fun, but I do need to go. So I have to go somewhere this evening, and I need some time to get ready. But thank you all, and
we're so glad you could be with us today. This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, you too, and hopefully I'll see you again.
Yes,
Okay.
why?
All right, I'm going to try to click off here.
There you go.
Bye.
Well, as Jocelyn is leaving us,
We're trying. Anyway.
we're trying to leave us, and I can also, there's a little leave call thing that should show up that looks
It's
like
a red phone.
Red phone. It looks
for
like that on
calling the Soviet Union.
Oh, wait. Oops. No. Oh, wait. Is this it?
There you go.
That was it. No, it wasn't.
That
That's
was
the
it.
microphone. It
Yeah,
should be
was
near
it.
that.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
She got out.
You got out. Yay. Okay, well, no, I'm so glad that Jocelyn could come today because it is so nice to have a voice, another voice of experience. Those days when I feel like, I'm the old person, that's not a good feeling. Or, the grizzled veteran, I guess I should say. I don't call that grizzled, do I? But, and then there are folks who are needing things. It was great today because we were all able to both give and also receive, and I thought that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, and I think what Jocelyn said about gratitude was incredibly valuable for me as well. So.
Oh yeah, that was worth everything right there.
Yeah,
and it's so important.
That's true.
So, is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about, celebrate, share, commiserate about, complain about before we break?
Not off the top of my head, and I'm sure I'll think of something as soon as we sign off, but oh well.
Well, that's the story of life, isn't it? But then, if you can make it tomorrow, we'll just pick up from there.
Oh, you know what? I'll say this before we go, is that so I have another Latin teacher friend who I think she watches these sometimes. I'm not sure, but her name's Tracy, and we've been talking on the phone like 2 or 3 times a week after school and just venting and shooting ideas off each other and stuff. And it's really nice to have that person during the week as well. So if anyone is interested in continuing our conversations one-on-one, having sounding board kind of time, or not one-on-one, doing this during the week, I'm happy to do that. Or if you want to email me, we can exchange phone numbers so we can text or something. Just because at least the more buddies I have, the better. In terms of bouncing ideas off people, because I'm the only Latin teacher in my district, and I'm sure lots of the rest of you are too. So if anyone else feels like they need another sounding board or a during the week buddy, I'd love to have more buddies.
Oh, that's an excellent idea, Ellie. In fact, I was thinking about ways that we could just have these available, maybe once or twice during the week, and I had not come up with one, but it really isn't that hard for somebody to start a hangout and share the link over in the group and say, stop by if you want to, and not necessarily do the whole big fancy recording thing, but just, be available if people need something. I think that's an excellent idea.
I'd be happy to do that now and again. I'm not going to record them for YouTube because it's like a lot of pressure. But
yeah, no, I agree. I think it's also easier for people to join sometimes. when it's just a regular hangout rather than a hangout on air.
All right, so maybe I'll do that sometime this week. Keep your eyes peeled.
Yes, we shall keep our eyes peeled. Nancy, did you have anything else that you wanted to say or add?
No, I think that's about it. I wish I hadn't missed the first few minutes, but this was very helpful.
You're in luck. We recorded.
About it.
That's true.
But it was mostly just me and Justin going. So, how was your week?
Yeah, that was pretty much what it was. Me complaining about my one class on Monday, and then sort of celebrating the fact that after that they had gotten. It's a class that I just see once a week, and that they had gotten significantly better after I sent a couple of emails to them and their families, and then had some individual time with some other people. So we were much better after that. Of course, it also helped that I realized that I had been coming down with a yucky virus while they were misbehaving, so I probably wasn't at my best. Yeah, but that's really pretty much all that we talked about was our weeks.
Okay.
You came at the perfect time.
I look forward to watching it all on YouTube later.
Yes, well, enjoy. And for all of our viewers, we're so glad that you're watching us now or later. And I guess it's that time, so I'm going to say Walete omnes, walete amici, and I'm going to take us off the air. But we'll see everyone hopefully at around this same bat time and bat channel tomorrow.